This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me on the Fully Managed podcast. Tellef, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. All right, so today we're going to start with a game. I like to cater these games towards my guests, so I hope this is something that you think is fun. If you don't think it's fun, don't tell me. That would make me really sad. I'm just kidding, but the name of the game is called Clickbait or Genius. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you some scenarios in which the concept may sound clickbaity, but some of them are real scenarios in which worked and were great campaigns, and some of them are not real. Maybe they would work, but we will never know. And you were supposed to tell me whether you think it's fake or a real campaign.
Have you played this game before?
I change the game every time. I've played a game similarly to this, but I like to mix it up because it makes it more fun for me and also makes it more fun for you guys.
Great, let's do it.
Alrighty, okay. First one is, a fast food brand once ran a campaign where they only served burgers to customers who whispered their order.
Clickbait.
Yep, totally right. Okay, you're already doing great. Okay, a candy brand made a billboard entirely out of real chocolate bars.
Clickbait.
That's real. Cadbury did it.
And did it melt?
I don't know the specifics of that, but that would sound really disgusting. So I hope not. Maybe they had some cooling technology.
Winter campaign. Winter billboard.
Yeah. And then it can't. It has to be like in a certain area. I would think that maybe it wouldn't get sunny in the morning. I don't know. Maybe Alaska during a certain time of year. That might work. Okay. Next one, a fashion brand created a VR runway show where attendees had to wear pajamas.
It was clickbait, or what was the other option?
Fake or real?
Let's say that's real.
Clickbait or genius, I guess.
Genius.
That is fake. That is clickbait.
All right, we're on a losing streak here.
No. Oh, you changed your mind because you said fake at first.
No, I was guessing that was genius.
It's always guessing. Don't even worry. I think only if you're familiar with them. Okay, next one. A soda company built a vending machine that gave you free drinks if you hugged it.
Genius.
Do you remember this? Do you remember who did it?
It feels like it rings a bell, but I don't.
It's Coca-Cola. I do remember this campaign. I thought it was really bizarre, but I don't really know what it really showcases. I think that's really funny when campaigns work out, but I don't really understand what they have to do with the company. Okay, last one. A mattress company launched a billboard that doubled as a nap pod for commuters.
A billboard that doubled as a nap pod. I'm going to go with genius because I'm bullish on the innovation from the mattress industry.
I do love the idea of this, and I am surprised because it is real. It is IKEA, which I thought was interesting because I guess IKEA isn't necessarily a mattress company, but I guess they do sell mattresses. I wouldn't really consider it that, but well, you did a great job. I would say that was about 50-50, which I think I would have done more poorly if I didn't create the game myself. So I think you did a great job, and thank you for entertaining me with that. Well, what I want to start with is tell me more about yourself. Tell the audience more about yourself. Tell us why you are an expert in this game, and why I asked you these questions in the first place, and your business journey, how you got to this point, and what you're doing today. I know that's a lot.
Yeah, I'll let you redirect me, but as far as an introduction goes, as I can see, at least on the screen, I'm the founder and CEO of ADM. ADM is Accelerated Digital Media. We're a performance marketing firm that I launched in 2017 after a stint at Google. And we work with a range of industries, but a lot of e-commerce, a lot of healthcare, and we ensure that our clients are spending their money on digital media platforms as efficiently as possible. And that investment they're deploying is contributing to the growth of their business in the most effective way possible.
Beautiful. Well, so coming from Google, why, what sparked, was it frustration or inspiration that made you think I have to do this myself?
Yeah, it was, I started to actually build some resentment around agencies. And I've been very happy to learn since founding ADM, there are a lot of great agencies in the world and a lot of great agencies in this country. And I'm proud to call a lot of them my peers in the space, both the companies and the leaders of those companies. But I was working on a pilot program that Google had launched where we, unique to the rest of Google Ads team, we were providing turnkey ad management services from within Google. Anyone who has had a Google rep in the past, which is a lot of people, knows that they're much more advisory focused. We were taking the keys to these ad accounts. We were managing every element of them and taking full ownership of the performance. And I had the opportunity to work with a couple agencies during that stint at Google. And I saw some really unfortunate things. I saw agencies that held ad accounts hostage. I saw agencies that really overcharged their clients relative to what I understood their workload would be. I had some calls with the agencies specifically where they were even critical of their clients in terms of what they were willing to pay them. And I just felt I could provide a better service at a more affordable rate. I felt confident in the growth of the digital marketing industry and in particular the Google Ads suite. And to me, it just felt those are the major forces that are needed to launch a successful business. And then, on top of that, I was really motivated by the work, getting exposure to different industries, exposure to different companies, and seeing how the money that we were deploying and managing for them on these ad platforms were directly contributing to their bottom line was incredibly rewarding and interesting.
I think that's incredible that you saw a problem and you intended to fix it based off of good faith, basically, that you just saw people doing something that was kind of unsavory and that you wanted to do different by people. And I think that's really great. And I can completely understand where you're coming from, because I do have many agency owners on the podcast that recognized a similar thing as you, is that so many people would come to them, maybe they were freelancers beforehand, or maybe they worked for another agency that did exactly what you're talking about. And it's kind of disheartening to see the amount of people that come to another agency kind of wary of working with another agency.
Oh, yeah.
In general.
Well, I think there's a few factors that play into that. You've got the fact that, digital marketing was incredible, that it democratized media for companies that want to spend money on it, right? You don't have to commit to a 30-day flight of a TV campaign and pay up front, which is going to be very limiting of who can participate. You can spend $1 a day on Facebook or Google, and you can get the traffic and the attention and the eyeballs that dollar commands, and you can scale up or down from there, and you can shut it off at a moment's notice. You don't have to make a 30-day commitment. So we had this democratization of marketing channels, which was phenomenal. And then you also had the barriers to entry for agencies drop, right? I worked at Google for a couple of years and built the skill set I needed to add value to other companies. You can take an online Google Ads course and go out there and try to sell services and win a client and really go from there. So I think the barriers to entry from the agency standpoint was definitely an interesting aspect to bringing in a lot of people to this market, which some of them are great and some aren't, and some are operating in good faith and some are not. And on the topic of just operating in good faith, I think there's bad actors in every industry.
Yeah,
I fully subscribe to the mentality that I assume the best in people, and you're going to have a much fuller life if you do, because you're going to be right 90+% of the time. And the 10% of the time when you're not and it hurts, it still is, it doesn't hurt enough to outweigh the value you get in believing in people and believing in the goodness of people. But I think in this country, if you find a market where there is demand, and I felt I had that with digital marketing and the Google Ads suite specifically, if you work hard and if you do the right thing and if you treat people well, you're going to be successful. So I think operating with good intentions and a strong moral compass, and I can't say it without thinking of Billy Madison, strong business ethics, you're going to be successful if you're in the right marketplace.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it is like an industry that had a very big boom. And I agree that the barrier to entry definitely probably contributed to a lot of quote unquote swindlers getting into the industry, because there's other industries that I agree with you always have bad actors in all, but at the same time, when an industry is very easy to tap into, then it makes more sense that there'd be maybe more issues. Yeah. But I do believe that, yeah, like you have to, if you're asking for help, which it inevitably, if you're going to an agency, you're kind of asking for help of like whatever their services, whatever services they're providing, you have to put a level of trust in them. And I think that it is really sad when you see that, you put your trust in someone with like your business, like your baby, and you they didn't do right by you. So it is nice to see when agencies are doing that.
Well, I think there's a couple elements to that, Shannon. You do have some people that they oversell and they can't deliver, and maybe they don't even have their best intentions, right? That's a clear bucket of those bad actors, if you will, who create a lot of those negative stereotypes that have some validity. But then you've got that sentiment that you talked about, where a lot of people, they come to an agency and they have some sort of bad taste in their mouth of an agency in the past. And I'd say a lot of times it's not necessarily because they worked with one of those bad actors, that 10% bucket that we talked about, which unfortunately was a little bigger than 10% when I was at Google, and the ratio of the agencies that I worked with. But I think like a lot of people come to their performance marketing agency with expectations of performance, and you have this case study, you have this portfolio. These are my goals. Can you do it? Can you not? If you say you can't do it, then they're never going to hire you. And so people say they can, and it turns out that they can't, right? So then the client looks at the agency as if they are to blame, if you will, for the lack of performance. And I think one thing that we've done differently, and it's been a part of our values, is operating with transparency. We are not going to guarantee performance ever. We will help our clients put together a forecast with all of the appropriate caveats that we cannot guarantee this performance. This is a dynamic marketplace. Every month that goes by, we're going to have more information about how performance will look in future months. So this forecast will be dynamic. And so I think like there's sometimes agencies suffer and the reputation suffers because of potentially miscommunicated expectations on their end, but also in large part inappropriate expectations from the client. And to round out this point, it's like we say to our clients all the time, we are an element of your business. You cannot have an e-commerce website selling t-shirts, work with us, and all of a sudden you're going to hit your profitable return on ad spend, right? You have got to be doing all the right things. You've got to build your brand in the community. You've got to have your email and SMS strategies buttoned up. You've got to be critical about your website flow and your website setup. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I think to conclude, just there's a lot of great agencies out there. There's some validity to those stereotypes that have not always shed the most positive light on agencies, but there's a lot of onus that should be put on both the agency and the client in terms of making those relationships be successful and symbiotic.
No, I completely agree with you. I think there is this level of unrealistic expectations that clients sometimes have for agencies, in which they either could never fulfill, or they have a vision in which they think they can fulfill something, but marketing can go unexpectedly often, even if you're doing all the right things to work towards a specific goal. And I think that that's something in which a lot of clients who are unfamiliar with marketing don't really understand. And I think that that's where transparency and almost over communicating is really important, because you're kind of, if you're conveying that you're doing all the right things and you've thought about every possible, way something can go, and it doesn't work out in your favor, that doesn't necessarily, at least they can see everything that you work towards that goal for, and they can understand that, okay, they didn't necessarily they weren't neglectful, this wasn't based off of something that they did wrong. This is just possibly the climate, possibly unexpected, it's something that you couldn't have predicted that made this not work in the way in which you originally thought it would. And that is something that you also need to be realistic and transparent with clients about, because I think that when you are that way, they're more likely to give you another chance or continue to work with you because you've done all the right things, but sometimes things just don't go the way in which you want. And I think that agencies are often scrutinized at a level that sometimes isn't fair, especially if they're marketing based, because there's just a misunderstanding of how marketing actually works a lot of the time if you're not well versed in the field.
Yeah. And I think it's on agencies to set the appropriate expectations with their clients.
100%. Yeah. If there's these goals that don't seem attainable because the business is not doing A, B, or C on their end, which has nothing to do with your work, then you have to be honest with them. Even if that's a hard conversation to have, or, you just don't take them on at all, but you shouldn't be accepting a client that has unrealistic expectations ever. That's just, how you don't get bad reviews.
Good point.
So talking about, having acting on good faith and having this agency, do you have a success story or a story that you're really proud of that, maybe shows, maybe you showed someone that has been previously burned that this goal that they have is possible?
Yeah. I think that the story that I'm most proud of, just to jump into it. So I was living in Ann Arbor, working for Google, living with a couple other Googlers, and we had a desire to learn more about Facebook marketing. So we reached out to some people who worked at Facebook, and we said, hey, we work at Google. This is who we are. We're three friends, and we just have an appetite to learn more about the space. We would love to teach you about Google if you're interested. And in exchange, would you be open to teaching us about then Facebook, now Meta? And so we ultimately connected with a couple guys. And then I had, during that time, I had left Google, set out on my own. They said, oh, so exciting. You should meet our friend, Fahim Siddiqui, who was running an agency called Social Within. My goal was to start by launching a Google-focused agency. He had been launching running a social-focused agency for maybe a couple of years at the time. So really kind of interesting backstory of how we got connected. He ultimately ended up introducing me. And what happened was we would try to pass leads back and forth. I had Google clients, I'd pass them social, and vice versa. He introduced me to a company called If Only, based out of San Francisco. At the time, I think she was the VP of marketing, Caitlin Watson, was receptive to the introduction. She met with me in San Francisco. We began working together. We worked for a couple years together, and she was then hired to go to a company called Nurex, which are you familiar with them?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah. So they're a telemedicine company, women-focused brand. And when we onboarded them, when she left, they were offering PrEP and birth control via telemed. She had a good experience working with us for the first couple of years and had the confidence to bring us in to manage Nurex. Fast forward, we worked with Nurex for 5.5 years. She moved to Talkspace and is now the CMO of Talkspace and has brought us in there, and we continue that partnership. So I think just an overarching representation of the confidence our clients have in us, the loyalty that develops, demonstrated by the value we've driven for them over the years, and also a really natural story. It's also the story of how we started working in digital health, which has become, the largest market that we serve across our portfolio.
One had no idea it was pronounced Nurex. I thought it was Nurx this whole time, and I'm actually very happy to have it correct.
There's actually, I asked her about this specifically because everyone says Nurx, and they always said Nurex, and they're like, there's no right way. It could be New RX, it could be Nurx. I was like, okay, if that's how you guys feel, then so you're not wrong.
Well, I think that's a lovely story, and it's also I love hearing about how an agency taps into a space, because I feel like it's often serendipitous. Like, it's not necessarily something that you seek out, but something that you just realize you're very good at, or you kind of make connections in that space, and so it ends up being a niche of yours. Do you feel that there's any specific, maybe not now as you're used to being in the space more often, but do you feel like there were any specific challenges that you faced being in this space rather than outside of it?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think serendipity is somewhat appropriate, but I also really believe when it comes to business, you create your luck. So it's like serendipity with an asterisk, and I think there was alignment of a couple factors here. My goal when I launched this agency was, yes, shatter those stereotypes that I had become familiar with when I was at Google. But it was also to build an agency that was focused on quality in all that we do. I want to have an agency that, I would be proud to manage the digital marketing program for my friends and family. And I know they're going to get the best possible service. And so we wanted to launch something that wasn't building a scaled operation and, exclusively focused on this is our process, you're going to fit into it, and we're going to manage 1,000 accounts, but more so have a one-to-one ratio of personnel to clients and have really thoughtful approaches in all that we do and strategies that we build, and take the time needed to understand our clients within our partnership. So to build that knowledge transfer phase really into our pricing, even because ultimately we're running a cost plus model. It's very transparent pricing. We need money to justify the time that we spend on our clients, and maybe less so in the early days. We were willing to kind of overwork, but so that was the goal, and that shaped how we recruited, who we recruited, how we trained, the expectations we set for people that joined the team. We started working within digital health. There's absolutely complications. You've got, if you compare it to a standard consumer journey in, product, for home goods, e-commerce, right? You've got platform policy that you need to navigate. Google has their own policy around healthcare and PHI. Meta has their own policy. Every platform has their own policy. You've got state regulations. You've got federal regulations around HIPAA. You have complexities of a patient journey that do not exist within a consumer journey. All things that need to be heavily weighted in your consideration of building out a program and understanding how to navigate those different elements. And because of our approach, building our team, because my desire to build an agency that's focused on quality, when we hit hurdle after hurdle working in digital health that didn't exist when we were managing, for example, Buck Mason a year prior, a men's clothing and apparel brand, we were able to navigate those and to find solutions, to be creative at times in finding solutions, to simply be diligent enough to do all of the reading that's necessary. For example, once the FTC started going after digital health clients for PHI and HIPAA violations, we just made it part of our process to reverse engineer every one of those FTC filings, understand what are they saying these companies did wrong, how can we give our clients guidance to do things differently. So absolutely, there were challenges, and we were fortunately set up well enough to overcome them and drive an incredible digital program forward for Nurex and eventually 30 Madison and the rest of their portfolio when they merged with Nurex.
Do you feel that the way in which you successfully interact with clients and your entire team does? Do you feel that that has a lot to do with the company culture that you've set up?
Yes, without a doubt, everything. And I think I learned more about culture at Google than I did about Google Ads, because I very quickly, I felt I was one of the best Google Ads managers in the country, not for blind confidence, but because I was interested in the product, I did the work, and I worked for that pilot program that went much more in depth with the ads platform. You know, we have access to ComDocs when you're at Google, which is basically the engineering write-ups of how the products work. So take your Google Ads Help Center and add all the technical detail that gives you the actual answers of how things work, not just what Google wants you to know or wants you to think you know. So I had a lot of confidence, but I learned very quickly there were people much better than I. And some of the individuals who were, of course, just have the raw talent and intellect and work ethic, but who are working at agencies where you've really got to be good at your job to maintain your job security, where I think Google, the job security is a little tighter regardless. I soon found people that were much more capable than I was to manage the platform. But again, it was the culture that I learned so much from at Google around creating an environment that people are proud to be a part of. And then I think what I did was I superimposed that with the standard of excellence that I wanted to see from my brand and my company. So, it's very hard when we hire someone, we make a full commitment to them and we uphold that commitment. And that person becomes a true part of the team. And if there's underperformance, it's very hard to get people to acknowledge that and hold people accountable. And eventually, if they need to, let that person go. But we were able to build a culture that essentially instilled that value of excellence to say, hey, if you have some person on your team, Shannon, if you're a manager at ADM and you've got 4 people and you bring someone else in, we made that commitment. If they have been informed about underperformance, if we have put them on a performance improvement plan, if we have nurtured them to get better and they're still not cutting it, while it hurts to let them go, you're actually doing a disservice to the other 3 people who are meeting your standard of excellence and the rest of the company who's working their tail off. And I think that culture is hard to instill, but we've been able to do it. And I really see people bought in top to bottom across our organization. The same way we have a feedback culture that is obsessive, and we go after our clients for feedback. We go after our team for feedback. And that's clearly something that we've curated. And it's a part of who we are now, but it was something that was very much a focus and intentional, for the first 5 years. And now it just becomes a habit.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a set up kind of a learning environment for your employees, especially when you want them to do their best work, because it is something that you want everyone to grow together. And if you have a member like you mentioned, maybe you've done everything possible in order to have them be successful and somehow they are still not doing that in their position, it is limiting for the rest of the team to have to correct their mistakes or show them how to do something over and over again or whatever it may be. And unfortunately, you have to be realistic in those scenarios, but to be able to have a culture in which people are comfortable giving feedback, taking it, and improving what they're doing, that's something that's really important. And also important on educating a client too, not just maybe someone on your team, because I think that part of being in an agency is educating a client on what you're doing, why you're doing it, and also maybe what they could be doing on their end to help you be more successful. And I think that those can kind of go in tandem and be a similar, if you're supposed to be kind of an extension of a business in which you're working with, that those can kind of work together and be the same environment in which you're trying to create.
Absolutely. And I find the best clients make feedback a two-way street and are genuinely open to it.
I completely agree, and that's why referrals are really preferred in this kind of industry, because you want someone to be able to have that. If you really like working with someone, you'd really like to work with maybe a friend of them, because hopefully they're also really good at taking feedback and being easy to work with.
Yep.
Okay, that was a really positive thing. I also want to talk about maybe how you were able to grow earlier on when you started your agency. What was something that you think was a really difficult challenge that you faced kind of in your earlier stages?
Yeah, it was, I think it just took a lot of work. I had like a 2-year stint where so just to frame this a little better, and I'm happy to continue the conversation, by the way, if you want to continue as far as the time goes. So I got to the point where I had more work than I could do myself, and I wanted to set myself up to keep growing and bringing in business. It didn't take many accounts because I was providing a high touch level of service. So maybe I had four to six accounts. And so I started to recruit a team, and I did it by reaching out to the third-party vendors that I knew Google hired in India. The two companies at the time were Accenture and Regalix. And I just reached out to anyone and everyone I could on LinkedIn and took conversations and saw if people were interested in this job, and then put them through an interview process. And that was a massive challenge, right? I had to understand how these people worked. I had to wake up at 4:35 a.m. to meet with them after their day of work, to QA their work, discuss the reporting, make sure I had the information and the tools that I needed to go to the client calls throughout the day and be prepared. Not to mention make sure performance was good enough. So I think that was the biggest challenge, and it extended to those first couple of years where that was the workflow. It was building this team in India, reporting to me in Chicago, never meeting them. And I've got to shout out Anamika and Vishanki if they ever happen to watch this, because they were two of my star performers. My first hire from that process was Isaac Uloko, who did all of my tagging and my implementation of pixels, anything that was back-end analytics he was owning. He's now our director of measurement and attribution, and he's been with the company since that day that I hired him in the summer of 2017. So it's all smiles and rosy now, but it was a grind for those first couple of years. And I some like the big like entrepreneurial thought leaders, maybe it's someone said once, if the average person works an 8-hour day and you work 16, at the end of the year you've worked 2 years and they've worked 1, and that's what I felt I did those first couple of years. Like those first couple of years, I worked an equivalent of 4 years, and it was a grind, but it's allowed for the 7 years after that to be really rewarding.
I think that's really important. I think that there is a level of improper work-life balance in the agency world that I think is much more prevalent than other industries. But I do understand, like, when you're creating something, if you're creating any business from the ground up, you are going to have that level of grind, no matter what, like, or unless you are unlikely to be successful. I mean, it is just like a reality of like starting a business, an agency, whatever it may be. And I think that's just being realistic. But I think that if you're doing that for years and it's not getting better, then maybe you're doing something wrong. But I think that if you're working towards something and you're like seeing the fruits of your labor in a normal amount of expected time, I think that that's awesome. And like to be able to, I can completely understand the hiring process, although I do not own this company. I interview for people on my team, and just creating a process for a job position in which you've been doing before that is hard enough. To be able to actually like define all of the things that are expected of someone and to be able to create that process, that's difficult in itself, because you're so used to doing something in a certain way that you've never really had to explain how it's done. And just that part is when you start hiring is something that's very, very difficult. So I can completely get that. But it's a success story to see someone that you've had at that position, grow to be one of the biggest parts of your agency. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I've got to admit, the process you just discussed is not my personal strength, but I've been fortunate enough to find the right team members along the way. And Eric Piketty, who he's now our chief operating officer, and he started with me December 1st of 2018. He's instrumental when it has come to build up the processes to set up new hires for success. And we would not be here today without him specifically, and people like him buying into exactly what you just said, and having the competency and the determination to do those things effectively, to set up the next individual or the next tier or rung of people within our organization. It's crucial, I think, in particular in a service business.
No, I completely agree. And I think that was a really great, wholesome note to end on, because you love your team. And I think that's really, really important. But thank you so much. Thank you for also staying with me a little extra time. But thank you so much for joining me today. I thought this was really lovely. I love the way in which your agency is set up. It seems like you can really tell when people are doing right by not only their team, but also their clients. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think that putting goodness out into the world hopefully promotes more goodness. At least that's my hope. And so I just appreciate you sharing today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for the questions. And likewise, thank you for putting goodness out into the world.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. I hope you can spread your goodness as well. I appreciate you guys joining us today. Please check out other episodes and check out Tellef in the description, as well as Accelerated Digital Media. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.